Alrighty, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whenever this happens to be for you. We are going to talk the 1920s, the Roaring Twenties. We have A Clash of Culture here, 1920 to 1929, so it's chapter 23. Alright, here we go.
During the late 19th and early 20th centuries, both in Europe and the United States, the most powerful cultural movement was something called modernism. Modernism is much easier to describe than define. Essentially, it was a rebellion against traditional standards of taste and beauty in the arts and in the social sciences, largely fed by changes in ideas such as the emergence of Freudian psychology, stressing the importance of our subconscious and emotional selves rather than our rational and objective side, helped feed the modernist movement. So in painting, art became increasingly abstract and less conventional. Similarly, in literature, writers began to experiment with very different forms of poetry and short fiction and novels. At the same time, dancers developed modernist styles. Modernism was widespread, it was diverse, it often thought among itself, it was very elusive as a movement to contain, but it nevertheless created most of the energy for the cultural development in the 20th century in the United States.
Excuse me, the coughs today. Alright, so post-war economy is going to differ substantially from the one that preceded it. So before the war was a lot more modest. After the war is crazy. Things that had once been only obtainable by the wealthy now are purchased by the middle class, cars being one of them. Innovations in communication made a more homogeneous American society. You have radios and movie theaters that become commonplace as ways to be entertained. And they drove the American desire to talk the same, dress the same, and experience the same lifestyles they saw on the big screen. Not much different than today. Alright, since the Wright brothers' flight in 1903, the use of planes advanced slowly. In World War I, they were originally used for reconnaissance until they were made into fighters, and toward the end of the war, bombers. In 1927, Charles Lindbergh would fly across the Atlantic solo, first one. This would promote the feasibility of air travel in American society. Still, automobiles were the more numerous and significant revolution in travel. Henry Ford's innovative assembly line technique cut the cost of his Model T substantially and made it affordable for a new generation of Americans that was more affluent due to the post-war boom. Excuse me. So basically, we come back from World War I. Not only have we lost 100th of the men that were lost in the rest of Europe, we're also experienced this surge in our economy, which is not what's going on in Europe. So, all right. So the modern home, the 1925 Westinghouse advertisement urges homemakers to buy this Cozy Glow Junior heater and Solux Luminaire lamp, among other new electrical gadgets, or electrical appliances, sorry, that they would do anything for you in return. So imagine if we lived life without all these things today. I love the little toaster. Can you see that right here? Where you can see the side of your toast toasting. How much burnt toast might that save? Amazing. Alright, this is Charlie Chaplin in a still image from his classic 1921 film, The Kid. The radio brought this farm family together and connected them to the outside world. By the end of the 1930s, millions would tune into newscasts, soap operas, sports events, and church services, and to their lovely president, FDR, with his fireside chats. Let's see. Gravity slides and chain conveyors contributed to the mass production of automobiles. It's pretty cool, huh? Alright, so the increase in modes of transportation and income brought with it new opportunities to take part in recreational activities that were previously unavailable. So what are our spectator sports? The same as they are today. Baseball, football, and prize fights become common weekend destinations. Again, sounds familiar. Alright, F. Fitzgerald. I said that completely wrong. F. Scott Fitzgerald, not Fitz Scott Gerald. F. Scott Fitzgerald dubbed the post-war era the Jazz Age because young people were more willing to embrace new experiences such as jazz. African and European music comes to be melded during this era, and the result was jazz. That's where you get jazz. It comes out of the Harlem Renaissance. So jazz emerges, and you can notice most of these, or all of these musicians are black or African American. So it is definitely a. I should get y'all some video of this. I'll try and remember to do that for a class. Anyway, jazz emerges in the 1920s as a uniquely American expression of the modernist spirit. African American artists best at musical convention to give freer rein to improvisation and sensuality. I think I can find some video of Duke Ellington. That would be kind of cool. Okay. All right. Women gained the right to vote in federal elections with the passage of the 19th Amendment in 1920, following World War I and the contribution made by women in the workforce. Wilson renounced his reservations about the amendment and publicly supports it. Although the number of women in the workforce climbed after the war, they still principally worked in traditional occupations as secretaries, dressmakers, and clerks. These are flappers, so you can see their bobbed haircuts, their short dresses. Loose women in comparison. They danced atop the Hotel Sherman in Chicago in 1926. That just looks dangerous. Especially with the way they were dancing in that time. Just fall off the side of that building. Alright. The most significant development in the African American life in the 20th century occurred when the white workers were drafted for the war and African Americans were encouraged to move north and take over for the soldiers. In a move known as the Great Migration, over 323,000 African Americans went north during the war, and by 1913, 615,000 more had joined them. That's pretty crazy, huh? During this time, a period of Negro nationalism would develop with an emphasis on their culture. Adherents were known as the New Negroes. The greatest proponent of the time was Marcus Garvey. He created the Universal Negro Improvement Association, which promoted the recolonization of Africa by its members. Garvey was an immigrant from Jamaica, and I don't remember if it was fraud or something. I don't remember what his crime was, but he's actually deported back to Jamaica at some point. Anyway. But yeah, the recolonization of Africa is kind of crazy because at this point in the 1920s, I would probably say 90 to 95% of African Americans or Africans that are in the United States were born in the United States. So people of African descent, they were born here, and many of them for many generations. So many of them had no ties to Africa at that point. So it's always kind of interesting to hear the people who think they should be sent back to Africa. Kind of crazy. It's like saying I should go back to Italy, even though I've never been there in my life and don't know anybody. But, you know. Alright, this painting by Aaron Douglas exemplifies how black artists in the Harlem Renaissance used their African roots and collective history as artistic inspiration. Paintings from the Harlem Renaissance are often very colorful, very vibrant. A lot of movement in them, a lot of times dancing and music and that kind of stuff. So, very cool stuff. So hopefully we'll see more of that in presentations. Alright, so this is our friend Garvey, who was the founder of the Universal Negro Improvement Association and a leading spokesman for Negro nationalism in the 1920s. Alright, so when Albert Einstein announced his theory of relativity, he upended 2 centuries worth of conventional wisdom. This would lead to the birth of the modern physics movement. Other scientific studies during this time would also be transformed by this redefinition of thought, and scientists would apply it in other disciplines as well. Excuse me. Whereas 19th century authors and artists had taken for granted that everything in the world could be readily observed and represented accurately, their 20th century counterparts found themselves in a reality where new things could actually be created. Their works would reflect this outlook. You have a traveling exhibit of modernist artist works. You have the Armory Show, which 1920. Shoot, I don't remember the date. Anyway, check out the Armory Show. Very cool stuff. This is a painting called The Russian Ballet, 1916. Jewish American artist Max Weber's painting is a modernist take on a traditional subject. And you can see it's got very kind of what we would call cubist looks that is similar to the style of Picasso, who creates that cubism. But people are definitely walking away from the painting exactly what you see, or even the Impressionists, where you're still kind of painting off of real life. Starting to create more, and we're going to start moving into even more abstract art as the years fly by. All right, Ezra Pound, T.S. Eliot, Gertrude Stein, leaders in the modernist movement. This term was coined by Gertrude Stein to describe the generation of adults who came of age during World War I, the lost generation. So, yeah, interesting. Okay, well, that's all I have from the chapter, but if you want to hang tight for a second, let's see if we can find some Duke Ellington. All right, hold on, let's see. YouTube, that's our friend. Oh, what? That's not good. Dagnabbit. Let's Google it. Now you're sitting here going, Miss Mauricio, you're so crazy. Duke Ellington video. Let's see. Oh, here we go. It don't mean a thing. This is 1943, but at least you can, if it'll play it, let's see. Come on, you know you want to. It don't mean a thing if it ain't got the swing. Do it, do it, do it, do it. Well, I guess YouTube's not our friend today. Well, I'll have it for you in class. And if you miss it, Google Duke Ellington. He is a pretty cool performer, even 20 years after his initial debut. But anyway, I guess that's all we have for today. I hope you have a wonderful afternoon, morning, afternoon, or evening, and I will talk to you soon. Bye.